Well, joining us in studio is Marie van der Zel, president of the Board of Deputies of British Jews. That's the main umbrella organization for the UK Jewish community. And Marie, it seems every day there's some new revelation about Jeremy Corbyn involving connections with anti-Semitism or extreme, I would say, or even hatred of Israel. Is there a tipping point here that will finally induce at least some people in the Labour Party or in the wider British public so that Corbyn will have to moderate his views?
Good evening. Enough is enough. You've seen there was a huge demonstration outside Parliament. The UK Jewish community has already reached that tipping point. We don't know how much worse it's going to get in the Labour Party. He is now cavorting, spending time with terrorists. He's refusing to apologise for being at the ceremony in Tunisia, laying a wreath. That was an outrageous act of terrorism. He is not engaging with the Jewish community properly, and he is being judged by the behaviour and the people that he talks to. There is.
I mean, tell me, from your perspective, is this an issue that is prioritized by the British Jewish community or by the British public as a whole? I mean, we certainly see the headlines. This is covering, it has been covering all week, all kinds of British newspapers. But is this enough of a sort of central issue for the British public, a concern? It's
becoming an issue for the British public because it gets at his whole credibility. If he's honouring terrorists, what would he be like as a UK Prime Minister? That's the point. And the general public can now see what he's like, and he has to own up to his past and confront it. Racism is an issue not just for Jews, but for the whole of the UK. And this has been solidly on the news in the UK for weeks.
So how do you explain, though, that he doesn't seem to necessarily, there aren't really major consequences? A while back, Labour had that internal investigation of anti-Semitism that they conducted themselves. Why does it keep happening? Where is that accountability?
He's a popularist leader. Accountability will come when there is a general election. But the Jewish community in the UK is not staying silent. We are fighting this with everything we've got. He needs to accept the international definition of anti-Semitism. They need to ensure that anti-Semites are disciplined because they've got hundreds of cases that haven't been dealt with. And they need to engage properly with the Jewish community and restore confidence. But we don't know how much worse it's going to get.
Right. Marie, you mentioned accountability coming in a general election. Polls show that he is certainly, we can't rule out the possibility that Jeremy Corbyn will be the next Prime Minister of England, and we've certainly seen enough surprises in recent years. If that happens, what does it mean for the Jewish community specifically? Is it possible? I've heard some British Jews say they may think of leaving the country.
It's a really difficult situation because the Jewish community is anxious, very, very concerned, very, very nervous. The UK is a great place to live, but people are talking for the first time that maybe they would consider leaving the country. We're a long way from that at the moment, but we need to keep calling out anti-Semitism and racism in all forms.
What do you think, as a leader in the Jewish community, that is necessary now from also outside the Labour Party? Because we see that Jeremy Corbyn doesn't seem to have much of a problem with what he's saying. He's hitting right back. He's sort of, calling out those attacks on him. What is needed from the outside to actually create change? What are you pushing for?
Well, the unions that provide a lot of funding to the Labour Party are starting to come on side. Today, they've indicated that they want Labour to accept the full definition of anti-Semitism and all the examples, and the great British public, because this has now been on the news for weeks and weeks. And nobody in the UK thinks it's acceptable for a leader of the Labour Party to be seen with terrorists. Not once, not twice, but countless times.
Marie, Prime Minister Netanyahu just weighed in on this issue. Is that something that is helpful or maybe even detrimental to the battle that you at the British community are fighting there in the UK?
These were Israeli athletes that were massacred. I think he was fully entitled to give an opinion on that. And the way that Jeremy Corbyn responded shows his lack of credibility.
If we're going forward looking at the Labour Party itself, is this just about Jeremy Corbyn or is this about the party?
The MPs in the party, a lot of them have really fought hard in the Parliamentary Labour Party. It's not endemic in the MPs, but it's mostly endemic in the wider members of the Labour Party itself. That's where the problem is. They don't have the power, and it may be that some of those MPs decide to leave and go independent.
But we have seen at the local levels it is a problem, yes?
Definitely, definitely. It's local members, the party membership, the way it's organised now, that's what's led to this situation. Right. Momentum.
Mary van der Zyl, thanks very much for being with us, talking to us about what is not just a priority for Britain's Jewish community, but many really Jewish communities watching around the world, and as you say, should be for the British public as a whole.